Continuing with the article from the Aschers, Numbers and Relations of Ancient Andean Quipus. This is the fourth quipu that's discussed in their article. It's also part of the collection of the Heye Foundation at the National Museum of the American Indian. This one is number 178821. So the thing that's probably the most noticeable is that the primary chord has two different colors. It almost looks like maybe they were two different chords that were attached. They might. I'm interested to see when we look at more in depth of the numbers, kind of if there's a relationship between the pendant chords on the right and the pendant chords on the left here. I can see right away that there are on the left two groups of pendant chords. Likely these will have top chords, as we've seen in the other quipus analyzed by the Aschers. And on the right-hand side, it looks like three pendants, one of which has a subsidiary, and they're not grouped together. They're spaced quite a bit. So here's our detailed diagram, and we can see, so the first group does have let's get some color here. So the first group does have a top chord. The second group does not, but they are, as we saw in the photo, they are very closely packed. And then the second portion of the quipu has four independent pendant chords, and the knots look strange over there. We'll get there. So first of all, we'll take a look at the spacing. We can see that the primary chord starts with a space of 10 centimeters. There is a space in between these two groups and another quite large space that we were able to see in the photo between the two sections, and there were spaces noted here. Given that there's 2 centimeters, 2 centimeters, and then this one is 4 centimeters. Not sure if it's intentional that there's that much space, but because they're so irregular, I wouldn't be surprised if there should have been a pendant chord here that maybe had broken off with artifacts that are quite old. This is something that maybe we ought to keep in mind, is that they may be incomplete. So let's go back into the first group and look at the knots. So we have 3 single knots right by a figure 8 knot, a large space, and then a long knot with a value of 2. And the value listed by the Aschers is 312. Let me check in the article, make sure I didn't put that in wrong. So the top chord. Okay, so the first group of 3 single knots is at 4.5 centimeters, and the one figure 8 knot is at 7 centimeters on the top chord, and then the long knot with 2 loops is at 28 centimeters. So there is a considerable space here. It will, we might consider an alternate value of maybe 402 because these are so close, or maybe this is 3102, 3102. Looking at the pendant chords, It is interesting to see here on chord number 4 that there is a long knot with 7 loops, and it is defined as being in the tens place. Usually what we've seen before is that things in the long knots are only used in the ones place, and anything above that, the tens, hundreds, thousands, tend to be only single knots, which is kind of what we're seeing here as well. This figure 8 knot is usually indicative of number 1 in the units place and not usually used in the tens place. So it's kind of interesting. Where it's consistent in the Khipu, I am a little more inclined to believe that yes, this is the tens place. The other knots do seem very straightforward. There's only one of them, and they follow the pattern that are used in the units, but because of their placement on the chord, looks like these ones were given a value of 10, and these ones were given a value of 10 also. Moving on to the next group, the values that were assigned. Again, we're seeing the kind of knots that are typically reserved just for the units place, and they're all over the chord. But they do still line up pretty nicely. These are on a similar level. What might be the tens place is on a similar level. So they line up nicely. Where they don't have a top chord, we can't really compare the numbers. This might not be a numerical Khipu. There are some Khipus where there's not a clear mathematical relationship, and the way that the knots are used is different than you see in the numerical Khipus. And some people do think these are more narrative. We know that the Khipus were, there were accounts from the Spanish chroniclers, including the Inca Garcilaso de la Vega and I believe Las Valera, and they talked about things that the Khipus were used for outside of like census records and accounts of tribute. They could have been used for recording laws, histories, special events. So moving on to the next group. These ones also, they don't seem to line up quite as nicely as the other ones. The Aschers did assign them number values, but as stated before, this might not be a numerical Khipu. So color-wise, these last 3 are mottled white and brown. They're a mix of white and brown, and this one is a dark brown, or medium brown, sorry, in the article, and also these ones are medium brown, and these ones are the brown and white that are mottled. So there might be a connection in the colors that are a connection that's grouping these ones together. Perhaps in a later video I will provide alternate values and looking into different ways the knots might be interpreted and see if any of those make more sense. But for now, let's go on to the simplified diagram using the numbers that were provided by the Aschers. And here, if we add up the values of the pendant chords as they are recorded, they do some to be 312, as we've seen in the previous quipus. From this article, the subsidiaries don't seem to be included in this summation on the top chord, so I don't know if the subsidiaries provide a number value or if they're more providing context for the numbers provided. And doesn't seem that I can see a relationship between these mottled chords and these ones with the numbers provided as they were by the Aschers. Like I said, I'll probably come back to this in a later video. And same for the medium brown chords. Sorry, this one is white. It should be showing up as the dark green. And that's it for this one. It's definitely less straightforward, or less obvious than the quipus that came before. So there's definitely something different about this one.